1460 WBOS.
Stay tuned now for the Racing for Heroes radio show with host Brett Morash on 1460 WBOX.
Hey, Racing for Heroes radio fans. It is August 27th, 2021. We're here at WBOX Studios in New Rochelle, New York, 1460 of the AM dial. Streaming worldwide. We're on Facebook Live right now. And boy, we have an exciting show. And I do want to put out there into the universe a special thanks for the U.S. Marines, especially the ones that lost their lives yesterday, looking to help those Afghans and Americans that are stuck in Kabul right now get the heck out of there. So, and then David Steins did send out a note, make sure to wear red today for remembering all those who are deployed abroad. So thanks for that, David. With that, we have our first guest, no stranger to Race Fears Radio, the Colin Garrett, driver of the number 26 Sam Hunt Toyota Racing for Heroes car. And I'm sorry, but I forgot who your sponsor is for tonight's race. Colin.
Hey, Brett, how's it going?
I'm doing great. Who's your sponsor tonight? I want to give him a shout out.
We have Stillhouse on the car tonight.
And they're a bourbon distillery, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, correct.
And that's been the theme for the past 2 weeks. You had Springfield last week, and then now you've got another distillery. Although this is a black colored car this week.
Yeah, it's been a kind of the trend all year with all the Sam Hunt racing cars. So,
That's good though. That's good. Like, listen, I would race for Stillhouse or Springfield if I had a sponsor like that. So that's amazing.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Hey, so let's talk about we're going to talk about what's coming up. Let's talk about last week's race. So first of all, I want you to know that I'm very proud of you. I know that you came in 20th, but that's also 20th with you were just a lap down at the end of a very long race. So I think that was amazing.
Yeah, thank you. It should have been way better than 20th. I think we were up to 11th there at some point.
Yep.
And then we probably where it should have finished probably about 14th, but those last three overtime finishes did not really go our way in the slightest. So we just couldn't really fire off there at the end.
Yeah. Well, you were
it was a good race overall. So.
Yeah, at the first overtime, you were in 14th place because I was watching it myself,
Yep.
And I was like, "Come on, Colin, you got this, baby." And there's another driver who I won't say his name on the radio, but his dad is like super famous race car driver himself. He really blew it with the fuel reserves. So
Yeah.
It is what it is. You don't have to agree. I know that you have to deal with them tonight. So, but let's talk about tonight. So you're going to Daytona. Tell us about it.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. I actually just pulled in the place, so I'm looking at the World Center of Racing sign across the front here. It's pretty cool. It's gonna be fun. I don't particularly enjoy speedway racing, but it's always a chance where we can kind of have our moment in the spotlight. If we're gonna win at some place, it's gonna be a place like this. So
Yeah.
I think it'll be a good fun night. So.
And where are you starting in the pack?
I think we're actually starting 20th.
Oh, there you go.
Kind of pick up where we left off from last week.
That's good. That's good. Well, and now, but there's a difference between Michigan and Daytona. I mean, it's not just the weather, right? It's a whole different ball of wax, right? It's a whole different type of raceway.
Yeah. Like I said, this is more of a speedway type race where Michigan is a kind of downforce place where we get spread out and we race, and we can use different parts of the track. We're going to be by ourselves, where this is, we're all going to be bunched up on each other and pushing each other all the way around the racetrack. So it's going to be pretty exciting.
Gotcha. And when does the race start? When are we expecting at least the national anthem?
I think 7:30 tonight, and then green flag might be a little bit later. So.
Okay, good. Because I'm watching it tonight. My daughter has a dinner engagement that I have to drop her off at, but besides that, I'm watching the race. So
awesome.
Yeah, listen, between you and my daughter, my whole night is booked. So that's important. Yeah. So listen, let's talk about the 1111 project. So that's been going on pretty well. Can you remind our listeners like what that's all about and how that's going?
Yeah, it's slowly going. We're hopefully gonna really start kicking it off here in the next few weeks. The 1111 Veteran Project has been a thing we've been working on. We've obviously been supporting Racing for Heroes and the Racing Network and numerous other veteran-owned companies over the years. And this is kind of our deal where we're going to bring it all into one and try to make it one big thing where we can, make one big push to have access for veterans so they can get the help they need and keep pushing forward so they can continue their everyday lives without any hindrance.
Yeah, you bet. And I actually saw, you have two veterans at home. Well, actually, they're not even veterans yet. They're still on active duty. I saw a picture of you and your helicopter brother, I think.
Yeah. I was actually just with him yesterday, and we were up in northern Michigan vacationing. He's got a few days off, and then he's headed back to Fort Hood on Saturday. And then he'll actually deploy later this year to Eastern Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have my other brother. He is in Kuwait currently, loving life.
Oh, Roger, yeah.
That is.
Well, he's an intel officer, so he's at somewhat the tip of the spear for real.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's been pretty chaotic over there, and I've been kind of dealing with it all morning. So, obviously, prayers to all the families of the Marines from yesterday. It's a horrible situation going on right now, and hopefully we can figure out something to prevent this.
Well, as you know, our next guest is Nick Rabenau, who's on our board, but he was in the Special Forces, and we're going to actually be talking about, we're trying to get Ali Rahimi out of Afghanistan. And right before the show, we were kind of going back and forth with him on WhatsApp. He's still stuck in Kabul. There is, no real pathway to the gate. And, things are just not awesome right now. And I think that story could be said by thousands and thousands of Afghanis who helped us out, over the past 20 years that are now at very high risk of dealing with the Taliban.
Yeah, it's been a shit show to say the least. I've been talking with Nick actually all morning and night too. So we're trying to get together a game plan and see what we can do, and hopefully get these guys out of there, onto something else.
Yeah, no, for sure. I absolutely appreciate that sentiment, and because we have Operation Home going, so as you know, and as you go around the track, some of the stuff that we're trying to do is that those interpreters, as they come to the United States, they're going to need a hand up. But these are people that they put their lives in line for our country, and I don't think it's unreasonable for us to try to help them get up to speed as quick as they can.
Oh, not at all. I mean, it's kind of the least we can do given the situation.
Well, listen, if you need a tire changer for Sam Hunt Racing, I'm sure I can get Ali to do it. He's a pretty spry guy from what I've been told by Nick.
Yeah, maybe that's what we'll get him doing when he gets over here.
No, I think we're going to try to get him at the RFH HQ is our kind of game plan, but that's great. So let's kind of get back to racing though. So what's after Daytona? What is your next race that you're shooting for?
Actually, I'll be racing at Darlington Raceway next week, so it's going to be super exciting. It'll be my first time there.
Oh, wow.
Since last year. We had a mechanical issue that kind of hindered our finish, but we ran good nonetheless, and really looking forward to getting back there. And
are you using the same car that you did last week? I mean, I know the wrap's different, but is it basically the same vehicle, or is it a whole different?
So kind of. There are different chassis that we run basically every week.
Mm-hmm.
There's different chassis for each type of track. Next week will be a little different based on our Michigan chassis, and then this week for Daytona is a completely whole other deal. So,
oh wow, okay. Gotcha. And is Sam Hunt have another car in this race, or I think I remember like 54 or something was the other car.
So they can only take 2 cars when they're qualifying, and there's only I think 6 or 7 races with qualifying this year. So
okay.
Yeah, so I think their plans only take they've only done it once this year, so I don't know if they'll do it again, but it's a big chore for them. We're a smaller team, and to take when you have 2 cars at the track, you got to have 4, so you got to have backups for the rest of the cars. So it's just it's a big ordeal.
Yeah, so you're the only one with Sam Hunt Racing this week, right?
Yep, correct.
Okay, gotcha. And how's Sam doing? I don't think we talk enough about him, but he is a young guy like yourself who is in charge of a race team, like super entrepreneurial.
Yeah, I mean, he's pretty chill right now. He's going through Facebook looking at transfer trucks right now. So he's just hanging out. I'm sure he's stressing in the back of his mind about this evening. And that's basically his everyday life.
Yeah. Well, listen, I think if I was at Daytona right now, I'd be more like Ricky Bobby when he first started. I'd be like, I'm just so excited to be here, man.
Yeah, that's how it feels. But
yeah, well, and actually, I know I told you on the phone, but oddly enough, you drive the same number car as Ricky Bobby, which I don't think a lot of people
I didn't
knew.
actually realize that.
We got that going for you. I mean, you don't have a
Yeah.
Cougar on the hood or anything like that, but you know.
No.
But listen, I think driving, you know, the distillery, I think is definitely the way to go.
Oh, 100%. I might put Stillhouse across the windshield and, call it good.
Yeah. And so now next week though with Darlington though, that is also, that's not a super speedway though, right? That's a little bit more like Michigan, right?
It is a mile and a quarter, something like that. So it's actually, 3/4 a mile smaller than Michigan. It's a little bit tighter. And, I think they just repaved the corner, so it might be a little bit
faster
than it usually is,
Yeah.
and a little bit easier on tires. But it's a pretty cool, more of a driver's track. And, I've always enjoyed going there, and I think it'll be really cool and see what we are able to do.
Yeah, roger that. And listen, if people do want to follow you, where can they go to learn more?
Yeah, so I have www.colingarrettracing.com, and then all my social media is at Colin Garrett Web at WEB, and then basically follow just Racing for Heroes and everyone else. They share the pages, or you share the pages. So
yeah, and Sam Hunt Racing, I think, is the handle for Facebook as well.
Yeah, correct. Yep.
Gotcha. All right. Well, listen, Colin, I'll let you get back to preparing for the race. I know you're going to get your mind and body kind of focused on that. So, but listen, I want to thank you for everything you do for Racing for Heroes. You're a great human, and I wish you the best tonight.
Yeah, thank you very much, Brett.
All right, my friend. All right, talk to you soon. All right, everyone. That was Colin Garrett of Sam Hunt Racing, the 26 car. Watch tonight, NBC, I think, but it's NASCAR Racing Xfinity Series. Out at Daytona, starts about 7:30 tonight. So if you're not doing anything else, watching reruns of Law and Order or something, definitely be sure to watch NASCAR. So with that though, turning kind of the subject I think that's been on everyone's mind is really what's going on in Afghanistan right now. We have one of my favorite people in the world, but also one of the experts in sort of the security situation going on there, Nick Rabenau, who is also on our board of directors on the line. Nick.
Hey, Brett, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on today.
Yep. And listen, for those of you who don't know, Nick really is the impetus behind Operation Home for Racing for Heroes, which is our GoFundMe effort to help Afghan interpreters when they come back to the United States. So thank you for that, Nick, for your leadership.
No problem at all. I appreciate it. Anything we can do to help.
Yeah. And, I think that people don't understand that when it came to your engagement, and you started out in the special forces and eventually went back in the contracting role, you had to have interpreters. I mean, these were people that were, shoulder to shoulder with you out in the field.
Yes, and that's the difficult part for some people to understand, the level of effort that these guys have put into working with military and contractors. And also just understanding the amount of time and effort we spend in these towns and villages and cities within these other countries where we don't speak the language. We don't understand how people, how they look at us, or when they're in, when these interpreters are working with us, they put so much effort into making sure that we are safe, not just interpreting for us, but understanding the level of severity that we're in when it comes to us working in and around like the Taliban, for instance. And so the hat's off to these guys.
Yeah.
And that's where I think everybody's coming together to try to help them get out.
Yeah, and they don't rotate in and out like our guys do, right? I mean, like if you're in a special forces team, you're there for, somewhat of a limited duration. I think for the infantry, I saw 18-month deployments, were somewhat the norm at one point. But these guys are there. Rahimi is there forever. Like he's been an Afghan his entire life.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. So like, let's say in the Green Berets, we might do 6-month rotations over to Afghanistan, and we pass that interpreter off to the next team. And while we do the handover, we're also helping them build rapport with that new special forces team, and they're getting to know that interpreter. But that interpreter doesn't, like I say, he just doesn't interpret. He also helps you buy things, relationships, intelligence gathering, understanding the environment where you're working, because like you say, he has that constant on the ground effort while
Yep.
we are the ones rotating in and out.
Yeah, I mean, I lived that in East Africa where, I was there for about 16 months. And I remember coming in and then having to pass off the relationship being passed off to me as the new American but then I was doing the same thing on the back end of my tour, passing it off to the next guy. And it's tough because you do build those relationships, but for them, it's like this long duration stuff. And, as you pointed out, rightfully, they're there not just for protecting you or translating, but they're there to like help you navigate like the cultural awareness stuff that's so critical when you're really in this sort of like tenuous peacekeeping phase.
Correct. Yes. And if you look at, well, the first 3 years we went to Afghanistan and it was a war. And then we transitioned to essentially stabilization efforts. And while we do that, more contractors are input. And then you pull out some of the soldiers. And while that's all going on, these interpreters, they're shifting from military to contracting, but their focus is still the fact that they want to help Americans. And I think that's one of the big focal points here is that when they want to help us, we also need to look at it and say, we need to help you guys. And like the gentleman you're talking about, Rahimi, my interpreter, I worked with him for years over there and I rotated back and forth, but I kept working with him.
Yeah, no, it's terrible. And so now, of course, let's kind of switch to current operations. The amount of time that the US will be there, let's say overtly, at the airfield doing these evacuation or non-combatant evacuation operations is really drawn to a close here. I mean, it's August 27th today. It's almost August 28th in Afghanistan. There's only about 3 more days of this, and then that's it. Nick?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm sorry, but I was gonna say it's only about 3 more days of this, and then that's it. So what's the next step?
So that's the hard part. I am talking to people on the ground in Kabul at the airport and around the outside, both American and Afghan. And our goal is to round up as many interpreters as we can that we know of that work with the Americans. And we want to essentially help them to evacuate. And the downfall is when they first leave, they're not evacuating their family. It's just them. The gentleman I'm talking about, he has 3 kids and 1 on the way, and his wife, they're all staying back.
Yeah. Yeah, right. And that's in trying to get them out of there is going to be the next Herculean effort. I mean, and I think that right now with the bombings that happened yesterday, that's going to put a pinch on the amount of throughput that people, and listen, I mean, we're talking about things in the aggregate that are affecting people at the very micro personal level, right? But when they're talking about like the amount of force protection change that occurred overnight to protect U.S. forces after yesterday's explosions, that's got to put an impact on the airplanes getting out of there.
It does, because you have not only military planes flying over to help, but you have civilian aircraft that are being funded both by nonprofits and for-profits and also the government that are trying to get in there. And as we see the events unfold in Kabul, we have to understand that they're going to shut that airport down. They're going to have to find other means of transport to get out of there. And as of right now, the only way is either driving out of the city and out of the area and also flying out.
Yeah, and I was sent you that little note this morning when I was out running around that the BBC had reported that the border with Pakistan has actually become quite congested. So even sort of the plan B, which was to get out of there, get out of Dodge on a bus, is now at high risk.
Correct. Yes, and it all comes down to how we went about shutting down in Afghanistan. If you look at it, we essentially shut down the bases, moved everybody, and tried to push out of Kabul, which is the highest populated area in Afghanistan, which has the most Taliban in Afghanistan. And now we're trying to do it while utilizing them to try to support us, which doesn't work. And so now everybody's realizing that we need to shift to plan B and figure out how do we keep Americans safe first and foremost? How do we support the Afghans? How do we help these interpreters that have helped us and evacuate the area as safely as possible from what happened last night, moving forward?
And, Nick, I mean, if you were recommending to someone at this point, I mean, like I said, given that, on the 31st, that's it. What would you tell them to look for at this point? Where to go?
The easiest and quickest way would be to get out via vehicle in a low profile atmosphere and try to get to Pakistan.
Yeah, and that's pretty bleak.
And it's sad because I mean, all the bad guys, they watch CNN, they watch Fox News, they know what's going on. And so when we are telling everybody to go to Kabul to fly out, and we tell the interpreters that we're trying to help them and get them out of Kabul, where are the terrorists going to go? Of course, they're going to follow what we put out on the news and social media. And so we need to shift focus and figure out how do we safely get these guys out of there without televising.
Yeah, which is, I think, an almost impossible given the absolute, connectivity that even the bad guys have with things like WhatsApp or social media or things like that. Like, they are using the same fabric that we use exactly the same way, except that, the fight is there. So they have that advantage.
Yes, and as you know, I shared with you some information from Rahimi. He was in line at the airport every single day this week,
Yep.
and he got beat twice because he got out of line to go to the bathroom and come back in line, and then they have to answer a series of questions while they're in lines, and there's thousands of people out there. And then you have all these Taliban that are standing around just looking for anybody that has anything that has English writing or text on the phone or anything, because immediately they know they speak or read English, and they possibly can be an interpreter.
Yeah, and they're a target, and unfortunately, because they have to go through that Taliban cordon, they're absolutely going to interface with the Taliban that day. Like, there is no doubt in my mind that they have to do that. And, that's the trick of getting through, of course. And I think in his case, he's not a Pashtun, which I think also plays a role. So he's being treated, in sort of a racist way as well.
Yes, yeah, you're exactly right. There's just so many dynamics behind being able to stand in line, have a Taliban individual question you and say the right thing, and the mannerisms too. And I got to say, there's a lot of Americans that are over at the airfield right now that are really supporting this effort, that are really behind the scenes helping get these guys to an airplane or off the ground out of Kabul. And we got to recognize that there's a lot of contractors, a lot of American soldiers that are just putting so much effort into this because they have also worked with those interpreters, these guys that we're talking about. And I want to say one thing, like the interpreters that we use, when they would risk their life to come to a military base or come to a location to work with us every single week that they were at work. And then they might take 1 week off every 2 months. They would take the bus and go home to their city and come back. And they would risk their life every single time because they wanted to come work with us. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the fact that they really liked what we were doing, as trying to help them and their families and ultimately their country.
Yeah, I mean, listen, up until, a month ago, or maybe a little less, there was a vision that, Afghanistan would provide for at least a democracy. I mean, granted, an Islamic country, but a democracy nonetheless, to, be beholding to the people of Afghanistan, male, female, regardless of what your, particular ethnic background was. So, I mean, it's super tragic.
Yes, and it's also sad because if you just look at the outside of it, we essentially said we're giving you a location and date of when we're leaving. We're leaving all our equipment and our vehicles, and we set them up. I mean, we set them up for success to essentially take over Kabul and some of these other cities, and so now we find ourselves, in a struggle because as we downsize, as we pull out of Afghanistan, we are boxing equipment up. We're palletizing. We're lightening the load of what we're taking back to the United States as Americans. And so as we do that, we're also in gunfights and conflicts and bombings as we're trying to get out of country. And that doesn't work. Like, we should have had essentially a security posture in place that stayed through the duration of what we're doing. And this 31st deadline, this is so arbitrary because technically we could essentially say we're going to be here until we're leaving, until we decide to leave. And then we could have essentially downsized and exfilled out of there in a manner that we didn't have to publicize on the news. We didn't have to have a countdown or anybody tracking.
Yeah. Well, Nick, when I'm Secretary of Defense, I'm definitely going to bring you on board for my team. So I'm just going to throw that out there in the universe.
Do you have to wear a suit?
You do have to wear a suit. No, I'll let you wear 5'11" pants and shirt all day. It'll be fun. The nice ones, though, like the The more expensive ones with the stretchy stuff in it. But listen, Nick, I want to thank you for everything you do for Racing for Heroes. I know you've been pulling at the oars, getting Rahimi and others out of there. So thank you for that. Any last words of advice for anyone out there?
Yes. So as you know, our nonprofit, we started a fundraiser. It's a GoFundMe. It's essentially a way for us to support what's going on with the Afghans and the interpreters and trying to transition them from overseas into the United States. And ultimately, our goal is to help them realign with the military here and work with them, because we know we're going back to Afghanistan.
Yes.
So we're going to have to help these guys. And our goal with our nonprofit and the fundraising is to essentially create a vehicle to make that happen.
And I think, we mentioned earlier, but if you go to GoFundMe and look up Operation Home, that's us. All right, Nick.
Thank you, Brett. I really appreciate the platform today to chat about this a little bit.
Well, listen, Nick, you know that I know that, you, not to sound like I'm on Princess Bride, but that I know that I really appreciate everything you do for us every day. And, if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't have Racing for Heroes where it is. So thanks for that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. And with that, Racing for Heroes fans, we are in the last 30 seconds of our show. So we're going to let it go with the real Doug Lane, and we will see you next week right here at 1460 AM, WVOX.com, or on Facebook Live. Thanks, everyone. Talk to you soon.